in this thing. About my own desires to be strong and desire. And he spoke to me, I guess, and said, but I got you, because I got you here. Amen. I got you in this place. And then as we were praying, hallelujah, we were praying, the Lord spoke to me, and it's fitting for this time, because I want you to understand that the calling of the Lord, we were living in a day and in an age, we were so self-consumed, I can tell by some of you that who have gray in your hair and the men who have gray in your beard, that we've lived a little bit longer than the rest of the people. And some of us remember, I find myself very fortunate to have grown up in the time in America where I have. I'm grateful that a person who is of African ancestry, but I'm not just African ancestry, as I tell you, you look at this nose, this nose didn't come from Africa. That comes from, if you will, my Italian heritage, my Sicilian heritage, and I have some Native American in me. No, baby, hallelujah. But I'm glad that I grew up on the cusp of the change of things. I'm glad because I have an appreciation for even the privileges that are extended to me. I know that going to school wasn't something that people of my particular hue could always do. My father had to quit school at the age of 4 to go work in the fields, and I'm not holding it against anybody. But what I'm saying is this: I think I counted a privilege. I remember the riots of 1968. I remember Dr. King being killed and Robert Kennedy being assassinated in the same year. I remember when they took prayer out of the schools. And you don't need to be a sociologist. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to see the downward spiral in our country since the time they took prayer out of the schools. And we moved from sex and drugs and rock and roll and burn the draft card and burn your bra into the 80s where people were talking about me, myself, and I and self-help. Then we moved to the 90s, Generation X. And then they don't even know what to call those of the millennial children. We moved from, I remember when Kitty Genovese was killed on a sidewalk of an apartment complex in New York. There's something that signaled the change of things in this country. And some 37 people or more. The sociologists look at it as the pivotal event in this country that signaled the change of people. Because Kitty was stabbed repeatedly for hours and stayed on the outside of her complex. And nobody came out to see anything about her. I don't know, and it used to be a time when something happened that no one, that was unthinkable, but something happened in the consciousness of this country. My God. I remember when Roe versus Wade was passed. Something began to happen to desensitize us. And we're living in a day and you know what? It is coming to the church. We have an attitude in the church now where persons act like they're subcontractors. They act as if they're loosely connected to the church. You know, there used to be a time when we were a church family and we were all in it together, when people volunteered, the sermon is worthy of his hire. But there used to be a time when people didn't always have their hand out in order to do something. Yeah, tithes and offerings are God's way. Don't fool yourself. Gainfully employed, the tithe is the Lord's. It's before the law. If I gross $1,000, 100 of it, the tithe is the Lord's. That's it. Somebody says it's the law, go check it out. Hallelujah. Check it out. Jacob promises the Lord, if you bring me back to this place, I shall give a tenth to you. But here's the point. The point is, there used to be a time I learned about how to serve in the church by my parents taking me. My father, who was the sexton, took me down every Saturday with him. And I had to clean up the church with him. Didn't get paid a dime. He said, this is part of your service to the Lord. I remember my mother, who was the church clerk, and we had that old Gestetner. We had that old Gestetner printing machine in the basement of our house, and we had the stencils. Some of you don't even know what they were. I remember having these stencils, and we had to pour the black ink, if you will, in the side of the machine and and we had to sit here and roll it around. I remember when I was pastoring Mount Moriah a few years back, and I remember they were in the back doing some, they were folding some bulletins, and they were back there going like this. They're going back here like the bulletins like this. I said, give me those things. I took about 20 of them when I creased them, and they said, where'd you learn that? I said, I learned that every Saturday afternoon when my mother would do the bulletins. We were downstairs, and our job was to sit there and to fold the bulletins. And when somebody said, why do you have to do that? Because I belong to the Mount Moriah Baptist Church, because I was saved and my parents were taught us, but also what they taught us was this, is that was what they called chores. There's a difference between chores and work. Chores is what you do in the house. Story is told about a city boy who goes to live on the farm for the summertime. They get up about 4 o'clock in the morning and they go out and they milk the cows and they make sure that the horses have the feed out there. They come in and they get ready to